Topic 1, Lesson 1. The topic is Human Factors in Ergonomics. This lesson is on anthropometrics. And in a nutshell, when we're talking about ergonomics and anthropometrics, what we're really talking about is taking all the different important dimensions of the human body and designing all the products that we're going to interact with in a way that they are most compatible with the human body. So that's what we're talking about. You see the little image here off to the right. Not that you can read any of that, but at least you can see there are all kinds of different dimensions that are clearly important when it comes to the human body and designing products that we work with. Okay, so I'm going to go through this. Just remember, this whole time you are the designer. So everything we're going to talk about is the responsibility of the designer and things the designer needs to know and keep in mind as they design products. So the users are going to interact with your product. If that's the case, then the easier it is for them and the more comfortable it is for them, the better it is for them. Design should always be human-centered. So if you like this little picture, it looks like something Lady Gaga would wear. Human-centered means you're not necessarily designing it for you, you're designing it for your target market, your target audience. And you're going to design it in a way that it appeals to them, but it is always also functional for them. Your customer should be getting value and they should be satisfied with the product they're getting. So you as a designer need to make sure you design the right size for your user, something that's comfortable for your user. Designers use measurements of human beings, and we have these anthropometric dimensions. We have those for both genders. Male, female, we have it for all different ages. We have it for different cultural groups because around the world you go different places and people's the way the different populations look unique from one another. So what you might design for one population in Asia may be very different from what you design for another population in Northern Europe. We use percentile tables. And if you look in this picture right here, the goal of this picture was to show you that people come in all different shapes and sizes. And you're trying to design products that hopefully meet the need of a lot of people. Are you going to meet the needs of everybody? Probably not. Okay, you're either not going to appeal to them or you're not going to design the product that they need, whether they live in a desert type environment or they live in Alaska. Could be very different places. So what people are looking for is different. So you need to know that there are different tables, percentile tables, and then lots of different ways of breaking this down for national populations, international populations, genders, ages. When you're designing, you need to, let's see here, consider how users will interact with the product. Okay, this is assuming that they are going to use it correctly, and we also need to make some assumptions on how might they use it incorrectly. Okay, so we need to design these products to be foolproof. You don't want to be sued as the designer because somebody mistakenly used your product in an incorrect way and ended up hurting themselves, because that will happen. If you've ever seen on McDonald's, I remember a bunch of years ago, their coffee cup didn't used to say contains or the contents in this are really hot, and somebody spilled their coffee on them and burned themselves, and I think they got sued for it. So now everybody has on their coffee cups, contents may be very hot. So you have to assume how they're going to use it and how they're going to misuse it. Ergonomics. By definition, it is fitting a job to the person. You can't force the person to change and fit to the job. That usually causes them to become injured or uncomfortable. So really for a designer, their job with ergonomics is to make sure they are designing the product for the user. Anthropometrics, which we saw at the beginning, it deals with body measurements and it's knowing all the important dimensions. Now, with the image here, with the different dimensions you're seeing on that person, maybe, let's say it's for a bike frame. This person's going to be sitting on a bike. They have a certain length to their leg. When they flex their leg, there's certain dimensions. All these would be really important if you're designing a bike frame for somebody to buy. So sizes, shapes, strength, physical capacities. Okay, functional data. This is going to be while the people are actually functioning in their workspace. Okay, so doing the tasks that they're required to do. So you're going to need to know, how do they move? What is their range, their clearance? How do they work around in their spaces? So reaching abilities, maneuvering, space, equipment use. Primary versus secondary data. My guess is a lot of you already know the differences between these two, but we're going to go through it real quick. Basically, if you collect the data, if you're the one specifically doing it, that's going to be primary data. So if you're a scientist or a researcher and you're collecting the data, then it's primary. Most of us, most of the time, that's not what we're doing. Most of us you collect data and use data, analyze data, summarize data that somebody else collected because they were the professional in that field that we might happen to be interested in, but we're not necessarily the researcher or the professional in that field. So oftentimes we will bring together a bunch of data and then we will reanalyze it for our own purposes and present it back. But that would be considered secondary data. Percentiles and percentile ranges. This is important because you need to figure out who are you designing for. Are you trying to meet the needs of 100% of the people out there? Probably not. There's not a whole lot of designers that are trying to meet the need of everybody. Usually the people on the end over here and the people on the end over here, we kind of leave them out a lot, but they become a niche market of their own. So oftentimes people will specifically design for just that group or just this group. So typically we work within percentile ranges, and I'd say the most common range you can hear about is maybe 5th to 95th percentile. Sometimes, and you can see the example here, 2.5% all the way up to 97.5 percentile. So those would be ranges that maybe you'd work through. Typically, 50th percentile is going to be your average. Now, what does that mean? Is it average for everybody? Is it average for a gender, race, age? It depends on the product and what you're designing. If we say 95th percentile, if we say that somebody is in the 95th percentile for height, let's just say that. What that means is 95% of the other people are that size or shorter. Okay, typically we go down. So like I underlined in that first one, it says at or less than a given value. So typically when you see something in a high percentage, you're talking bigger, taller, wider. Something in a very low percentage, it's going to be smaller. You can design your product in a range of sizes. For example, clothing. We rarely make a one size fits all in clothing. We typically have a range. So you might have extra small, small, medium, large, extra large, and you can go from there. Okay, so because it's not something that's flexible or adjustable in clothing, but sometimes things can be. We can build adjustability into products. So for example, in this little stationary bike, probably the health store only wants to carry one of each style. They don't want to have 4 or 5 different sizes of each style. So what we do, instead of building multiple sizes, we build in the adjustability so that we can custom fit it for everybody in that would want to use this. Now, when I say everybody, I don't really mean everybody. I probably mean 5th to 95th. Maybe I mean 2.5 to 97.5. Okay. Are we really that concerned about the people way up here and the way down here? Probably not, because there's so few of them. It's a small percentage of the market, and it costs us a lot more to build that adjustability into our product. If it's too difficult, we just focus where we're going to get the best bang for our buck or the most return on our investment. Adjustability, again, when you look at the inside of the car, and either this image has been flipped or it's a European car or Australian, what you're going to see is there are a lot of adjustable parts in here. Okay, the steering wheel probably can move in, can be pulled out, can be raised higher, can be put down lower. The seats can slide closer, they can slide farther back. Oftentimes they can be raised and lowered also. So there's a lot of adjustability built into a part when you don't want to have to sell multiple sizes of it. So just an example. Clearance. Oftentimes what you'll see in the IB curriculum are words like this, just key terms with the definition. So I will usually throw an image in there just to make sure you understand what it is. But clearance, when we're talking about the workspace that somebody works in, clearance is going to be an important factor in there, in that how well can they move in that area without crashing into things. Okay, so the physical space between two objects. Reach. If somebody's sitting at a desk and they need to function in that space, we need to know their reach. What is the comfortable space that they are able to work within, or without having to overreach or get up to move something, or having things too crunched in on them. Okay, towards the end of each of the presentation, you'll see a couple things. Sometimes there will be an international mindedness. Sometimes there will be a theory of knowledge type question. There will also oftentimes show the standards that you were supposed to have learned in that lesson. So for international mindedness, what they wanted you to think about internationally is that anthropometric data is published and regionalized. What that means is different areas have their own anthropometric data sets that they use for their design. For example, Asian data versus Western European data could be very different. Designer must work within the data appropriate for the target market. Again, if you design for one group, but you're selling it to another group, there's a good chance that they're not going to be happy with your product. Aim 6, this is kind of like our standard. Anthropometric data sets can vary significantly between populations, particularly in the fashion industry. And this is because fashion isn't totally focused on function. If you've ever heard of form and function, when you start talking about fashion, we're not just worried about how well does it work. We're also worried about the form part of it. What does it look like? Okay, does it make us feel good when we wear it or we use your product? So when they say the anthropometric data can vary significantly, when you're talking about fashion, that's because it starts to be about looks, and that gets much more subjective than just function. Okay, we're going to end this presentation with a video. Feel free to watch the whole thing, or you can shut it off if you get tired of watching it. But this will take us to the end. It's about ergonomics.
You people in office land, we're gonna teach you something that you better understand. Safety and wellness are important topics. So listen to a rap about office ergonomics. You're sitting there at your desk, your station's out of whack, and your posture is a mess. Your chair is so high you can't reach the floor. Your back is tired and your neck is sore. You got a headache from all the screen time. Your eyes are getting itchy from too much bright light. You feel the carpal tunnel closing in. If you don't make a change, then you're never gonna win. Come on, people, get on the floor. It's time for us to take control. Let's show the world how we roll. Go. First of all, let's adjust your chair. Get a seat that suits your derriere. Lower your chair so your feet at the floor. Sit all the way back and use the lumbar support. Thighs and knees should be parallel to the ground. That goes for your arms as well. Keep your elbows close at your side. This is called neutral posture and it feels real nice. Keyboard level or tilted down. Keep your wrist straight now. Here's your ergo crown. And with your mouth real close, you'll be the king of office ergonomics. Is that even a thing? Now raise your monitor. Come on and try. So the top third matches up with your eyes. And take a little break every half an hour. Stretch it out. Take a walk or go and smell the flowers. Come on, people, get on the floor. It's time for us to take control. Let's show the world how we roll. Go. Now that you know the basics of office ergonomics, it's time for you to take a pop quiz. Are you sitting up straight? That's ergo. Are you pinching your neck? That's ergo. Is your phone within reach? That's ergo. Are you running in heels? Now that's just straight up crazy. My people of the office show some devotion. Making a change, yeah, cause a commotion. Cobra ergonomics is good for your health. You can work for years and amass great wealth. So help yourself out, and then your neighbor. Be more efficient, and all your labor. There's so many things you can do. So listen up, yo, cause it's all about you.